The thing about Nelly Adam was that she had exactly two fears in this world. The first was failing. The second was dogs. And on a Tuesday morning in Seoul, both fears decided to show up at the same time. She was late. Again. Not because she overslept, not because she missed a subway, but because her best friend Temmie had called her at 6 in the morning screaming about a man. And Nelly, being the loyal disaster that she was, had sat on her bathroom floor for 40 minutes talking Temmie off the emotional ledge instead of getting dressed. This was her pattern. This was her curse. She gave everybody her time, and then sprinted through life trying to recover it. Now she was power walking down Cheongdam-dong, iced coffee in one hand, her portfolio tucked under her arm, hair laid, outfit clean, looking every bit like a woman who had her life together. She did not have her life together, but she looked good not having it together. And sometimes that was enough. The morning was sharp and bright. Seoul was doing that thing it did in late spring where the air smelled like cherry blossoms and someone's expensive cologne, and you almost forgot the city could crush you. Nelly exhaled. She had a presentation in 45 minutes. Her boss at the interior design firm, Mr. Cho, had already sent her 2 emails this morning and 1 passive-aggressive text that just said, "Today, Ms. Adam." She was going to be fine. She had prepared for 3 weeks for this pitch. She was going to walk in there, own the room, get the contract, and finally get the promotion that had been dangling over her head for 8 months. She took a sip of her iced coffee and turned the corner. That was when she heard it. Not a bark, not even a warning. Just a sound like a freight train wearing fur. And then she turned her head and saw it. A German shepherd the size of a small horse was barreling toward her from across the street. Leash snapped clean, tongue out, ears flat, moving like it had a personal vendetta against her specifically. Nelly did not think. Nelly did not assess the situation. Nelly did not behave like a 26-year-old professional woman with a portfolio and a future. Nelly screamed. Not a small scream. Not a dignified scream. A scream that made 3 pigeons leave a rooftop and a grandma across the street grab her chest. She spun on her heel, iced coffee flying, and she ran. Full sprint, arms pumping. Portfolio clutched to her chest like it was her firstborn child. Heels clicking against the pavement in absolute chaos rhythm. "Get away from me! Get away from me! Oh my God! Oh my God! Lord Jesus! Ancestors! BTS! Somebody help me!" She cut through the sidewalk crowd, and people were jumping out her way, some confused, some laughing, one man filming. She didn't care. The dog was still behind her. She could hear it. Or maybe that was just the sound of her own heartbeat. She could no longer tell. Fear had taken the wheel. She swung around a pillar, cut left, and crashed. Not tripped, not bumped, crashed. The kind of full body, no time to brace, absolute collision that made a sound. She hit something solid and warm and completely immovable, and her portfolio went one direction. Her phone went another, and she grabbed onto the nearest thing to keep herself upright, which turned out to be the front of someone's shirt. Then she heard it, one sharp breath in, like she had done something deeply, irreversibly wrong. She looked up. The man staring down at her was looking at her the way people look at something they cannot believe just happened. His face was still, dangerously still, dark eyes, the kind that didn't give anything away, jaws set, not tight, just composed in that way that felt more threatening than anger. He was tall, and she was gripping the front of his shirt with both fists, her chin barely reaching his shoulder, and the world had gone weirdly quiet around them. Then she heard a low, controlled voice say very slowly, "Let go." She let go instantly, stepping back, except her heel caught the edge of the pavement, and she stumbled again, and his hand came out automatically and caught her wrist, and he released it just as fast, like he had touched a hot stove, pulling his hand back and looking at it like it had betrayed him. That was strange. That should have been her first clue. "I'm so sorry," she breathed, pressing a hand to her chest, still catching her breath. There was a dog, a huge dog. I don't know where it went. It came out of nowhere, and I have a serious condition where dogs make me temporarily lose my mind, and I'm really sorry. Are you okay? He looked at her for a long moment. "Are you asking if I'm okay?" he said. And it was not a question. It was a statement wrapped in something that was almost disbelief. "Yes, I ran into you." So logically the question, "You're the one who ran into me." "I know that. I just said that." He stared at her. She stared at him. It was at this moment that Nelly noticed the other people. 2 men in dark clothing had appeared from nowhere, flanking the man on both sides, moving in with a kind of quiet precision that made her take a step back. Not bodyguards in the movie sense, no earpieces, no obvious muscle. But the way they positioned themselves, the way their eyes scanned the street, the way they looked at her like she was a variable they needed to calculate. That was not normal. Who was this person? "Sir," One of the men in dark was already moving toward her phone on the ground, picking it up, checking it, handing it toward her without making eye contact. Nelly took it slowly. The German shepherd appeared from behind a parked car, trotting up casually now, tongue lolling out, wagging its tail like it had not just destroyed her cardiovascular system. It walked straight up to the tall man and sat at his feet. Nelly stared at the dog, then at the man. "That," she said, "is your dog." "Yes, that is your dog," she repeated, because it needed to be said twice. "You already said that. Your dog snapped its leash and chased me halfway down the street, and I crashed into you, and it is your dog." Something moved through his face. Not quite guilt, not quite amusement. Something in between that he was working very hard to keep flat. "The leash broke." "The leash broke," Nelly said, her voice going up 3 notes. "You know what else broke? My iced coffee, my dignity, potentially my heel." She looked down. The heel was fine. It didn't matter. "I have a presentation in." She looked at her phone. Her stomach dropped. 38 minutes, and I look like I just competed in a relay race. He looked her over once, from head to toe, the way someone looks at a situation they're responsible for, but not entirely bothered by. "You look fine," he said. "I look fine," she repeated. "You keep repeating what I say, because what you say keeps being extraordinary." She picked up her portfolio from the ground, checked it, exhaled in relief that it was intact, and straightened up. "Okay, you know what? Nobody died. Your dog is fine, you're fine, I'm mostly fine. I'm going to go." She turned. "You have something on your jacket," he said. She turned back. There was a small coffee stain on the sleeve of her white blazer. Her white blazer that she had ironed this morning. Her white blazer that was part of her presentation outfit. Her stomach actually twisted. She looked up at him. He was looking at the stain with an expression that, if you squinted, could almost pass for remorse. "It's from the coffee," she said. "That fell when your dog—" "I understand." "Great. Wonderful." She closed her eyes for exactly 1 second, then opened them, pulled out the travel stain stick she always kept in her bag, because she was a woman who believed in preparation, and went to work on her sleeve right there on the sidewalk. The bodyguards were pretending not to watch. The dog was watching without pretending. The man had not moved. "You don't have to stand there," she said, still working on the stain. "This is a public sidewalk." She looked up. "Is that sass? Are you giving me sass right now?" "I'm stating a fact." "Right." She straightened, examined her sleeve, decided it would have to do. Then she looked at him properly for the first time, not in a panic, not while scrambling for her things. Just looked. He was younger than she initially thought, late 20s maybe, with the kind of face that felt like it had been designed with intention, not the loud, obvious handsomeness, more like the kind that got more complicated the longer you looked. Dark eyes that gave nothing away, a stillness about him that was almost unnerving. She had crashed into him hard enough to move a smaller man, and he had not moved an inch. He was wearing something understated and clean, and the 2 men flanking him were still standing there like furniture that breathed. "I'm Nelly," she said, because she didn't know why. She just felt like someone should say something human. He looked at her. "I'm not going to see you again," she continued. "So it doesn't actually matter that I told you my name, but I feel weird just walking away after that whole thing. So, Nelly, there it is." The corner of his mouth moved, just barely. "See woo," he said. "See woo," she repeated, then stopped herself before she could repeat anything else. "Okay, I have to go. Tell your dog to take a therapy class." She pointed at the German shepherd. The German shepherd blinked at her. "You too," she said to Siwoo, and she turned and walked away. She was halfway down the block before she realized she had told a man she would never see again take a therapy class, and she laughed out loud to herself, alone on a Seoul sidewalk, and someone gave her a look, and she did not care at all. She made it to the presentation with 4 minutes to spare. She nailed it. Mr. Cho sent her a thumbs-up emoji at the end, which from him was equivalent to a standing ovation. She got the contract. When she called Temmie on her lunch break to tell her, Temmie screamed so loud that Nelly had to hold the phone away from her face. "I told you." Temmie yelled. "I told you all that hard work was going to pay off. Now tell me why you sound like something else happened." "Something else happened." "Tell me." So Nelly told her about the dog and the crash and the man and his 2 shadow people and the therapy class comment, and Temmie was completely silent for 3 full seconds, which was unprecedented. "He told you his name." Temmie said, "I told him mine first." "Nelly, men like that don't tell strangers their name." Men like, "What? I don't know anything about him." He had a dog that almost gave me a heart attack. That's all I know. What did he look like? Tell me. I'm asking a simple question. He was tall, dark eyes. He had this face that was just, it was just a face. Tell me. It was a face attached to a person I don't know. He was very still, like weirdly still. You're describing him like you're in a nature documentary. Can we please focus on the fact that I got the contract? Yes, the contract. I'm so proud of you. Tell me about the face again. Nelly hung up. She went back to her desk, laid out her work for the rest of the afternoon, and told herself firmly that the morning had been an event that had occurred and was now over, and she would not think about a man named Siwoo who had a dog named apparently nothing, because she had not asked, and whose bodyguards picked up her phone from the street like it was a natural part of their Tuesday. She did not think about him for the rest of the afternoon. She thought about him for the rest of the afternoon. By now, before we keep going, can we take a quick second? Where are you watching from right now? Drop your country in the comments. I want to see who is tuned in all around the world, because this story is just getting started, and I need to know my people are here. And if you are new here, hit subscribe on Stories with Soul right now, because we drop stories like this every single week, and you're going to want to be here for every one of them. The second time Nelly saw Siwoo was not fate. She refused to call it fate. It was a coffee shop. There were 11 coffee shops in the block surrounding her office building, and she happened to be in this one at this time on this Thursday morning, because the other one she usually went to was doing renovations, and this was the nearest option. That was not fate. That was construction work and geography. She was at the counter waiting for her order, scrolling through her phone, replied emails with one thumb the way she always did, when the barista said something she didn't catch. Sorry, what was that? She looked up. The barista was not looking at her. She was looking past her, and her expression had done the thing that people's expressions do when someone walks in and the room's atmospheric pressure shifts slightly. Nelly turned on instinct. Siwoo was at the door. Same stillness. Same dark eyes scanning the room with that particular calm that was not relaxed, just controlled. Same bodyguards positioned slightly behind him, though she only counted one this time. The dog was not with him. He was wearing a different shade of the same restrained, clean aesthetic, and the small coffee shop felt about 30% smaller the moment he stepped into it. His eyes found her immediately. She did not know why that surprised her. She turned back to the counter. Just go to pretend that didn't happen, she said quietly to herself. What didn't happen? The barista asked. Nothing. When is my order ready? The barista pointed at the cup already sitting on the counter. Nelly picked it up, turned around, and Siwoo was 3 feet away from her because the shop was small and she had not moved. She looked up at him. Are you following me? She asked. Something crossed his face. I was here before I knew you existed. That's a very dramatic way of saying no. Is that your way of saying yes? You think I'm following you? I'm saying it's a coincidence that feels inconvenient. She stepped to the side to let him reach the counter, and he stepped the same direction, and they did the awkward shuffle that people do in narrow spaces, and she stopped and looked at him. One of us has to pick a direction, she said. You pick. She went left. He went right. It worked. She almost walked directly into the bodyguard on her way out and said sorry automatically, and the bodyguard stared at her blankly, and she walked out the door into morning air and told herself to keep walking. She kept walking for approximately 4 steps. Then she heard a voice behind her say, You're the one from Tuesday. She turned. Siwoo had come out of the coffee shop, no coffee in hand, which many had come out before ordering, and that was a choice, which meant, I am the one from Tuesday, yes. I'm usually also the one from Wednesday and Thursday. It's sort of a package deal. He almost smiled, the corner of his mouth again, that same small movement that felt like it cost him something. You nailed the presentation. Nelly went completely still. How do you know about my presentation? Silence. Not a comfortable silence. The kind of silence that comes with information it is not ready to share yet. How do you know about my presentation? She said again, slower. Siwoo looked at her for a moment, measuring something. Then he said, My company was the other bidder for that contract. Nelly's brain ran that sentence 4 times. You're telling me, she said very carefully, that your company was bidding for the same contract I just won. Yes. And you know I won it. Yes. So you know where I work. Your company's name is on the bid documents, and your name is attached to the presentation. She stared at him. That is either a completely reasonable explanation or the beginning of a thriller movie, and I can't decide which. It's the first one. Okay, and you just decided to mention this casually outside a coffee shop like it's a fun fact. You asked how I knew. I did ask that. She pressed her lips together. Her brain was doing calculations she hadn't asked it to do, the kind that involved the size of his company versus hers, the kind that involved the word bidder and the word contract and the word won. What company? He said it. Nelly heard it. Her iced coffee tipped in her hand, and she caught it. Han Si-woo. She had heard that name in the industry. Everyone in Korean interior design and architecture had heard that name, and if you were someone who studied the industry the way Nelly did, someone who read the reports and followed the projects and made notes in the margins of her planning notebooks, then that name was not a name. It was practically a landmark. He was a Han Si-woo, of Han Group, that had been behind some of the most significant architectural redevelopment projects in the city over the last 3 years. She looked at him differently now. Not differently in the way where she became smaller, differently in the way where the picture got larger and slightly more complicated. Your company bid for a mid-scale residential interior contract, she said. We consult across scales. That contract was worth 40 million won. Yes. Han Group's last project was worth 400 billion. He looked at her. You know your numbers. I know my industry. She straightened. Why would Han Group bid for a mid-scale contract? And there it was again. That pause. That measuring look, like he was deciding in real time how much of a thing she needed to know. That's not a question I'm answering in a coffee shop, he said. We're outside the coffee shop. Same principle. She looked at him for a long moment. He looked back without flinching. The bodyguard was a polite distance away, pretending to check his phone. This is strange, Nelly said, more to herself than to him. Most things are if you look at them long enough, Si-woo said. She blinked at him. Did you just say something philosophical? I said something factual. It sounded philosophical. It almost sounded like you have feelings. His face did the thing again. I have to go. Me too. She held up her coffee. For what it's worth, you would have lost a bit anyway. My presentation was excellent. He looked at her for exactly 2 seconds. Then he turned and walked back inside the coffee shop, and she stood there on the street feeling like she had won something small, and she wasn't entirely sure what it was. She was smiling for the next 3 hours. Temmie called at lunch, and Nelly answered on the first ring, which Temmie took immediately as a sign that something had happened. Tell me, Temmie said. I saw him again. The man? Dog man. His name is Han Si-woo. Silence. Temmie. Nelly. What? Han Si-woo. You crashed into Han Si-woo. You told Han Si-woo to take a therapy class. I didn't know who he was at the time. But you know who he is now. Yes. And he was bidding for your contract. He lost. You told him that? I may have mentioned it. Temmie made a sound that was somewhere between a shriek and a laugh. Nelly adds at him. You are either the most courageous woman in Seoul or the most chaotic. Why can't I be both? You can absolutely be both. What are you going to do? Nothing. There is nothing to do. I won a contract. I bumped into him twice through coincidence. And that's the end of the story. Men like that don't exist in my story. You keep saying that like you get to decide. I do get to decide. Temmie. I said, Nelly hung up. She went back to her work. She had a new project to plan, measurements to request, suppliers to contact, a vision board that needed to come off the corkboard and onto the walls of an actual apartment. She had things to do, important things, real things. At 4:30 in the afternoon, she received an email. The sender was listed under a company name she did not recognize. The subject line said, proposal. She opened it. It was brief, 4 sentences. Professionally written, no pleasantries. It said that Han Group was interested in a collaborative consultation for a specific residential project that had certain scope requirements better served by 2 firms. It said her company's recent bid demonstrated a design approach that aligned with the project's human-centered brief. It said if she was interested, a meeting could be arranged for Monday at 10. It was signed by someone named Kong Ji-young, Director of Strategic Partnerships, Han Group. It was not signed by Si-woo, but it was from his company, and it had arrived 3 hours after she told him he would have lost a bid anyway. Nelly read the email 4 times. Then she leaned back in her chair and looked at the ceiling of her modest but well-organized desk space and thought carefully about what a coincidence this was. It was not a coincidence. She forwarded the email to Mr. Cho with 3 words. Should I go? His reply came in 40 seconds. Are you joking? She wrote back, taking that as a yes. She sat there for another minute, staring at her screen. Then she typed a reply to Kong Ji-young confirming Monday at 10, kept it professional, kept it brief, and closed her laptop. Then she opened her desk drawer, took out her planning notebook, the one she'd been filling since she was 22 years old, full of projects she wanted to do and skills she wanted to build, and a version of her life she was working toward. And she wrote one line at the bottom of the current page. She wrote, "Something is happening and I don't know what it is yet." That was the most honest thing she had written in a long time. She closed the notebook. She went home on the subway, standing because it was rush hour, one hand on the overhead rail, earbuds in, and she thought about a man who didn't like being touched reaching out automatically to catch her wrist before he could stop himself, and then pulling back like the instinct had surprised him too. That detail had been sitting somewhere in the back of her mind since Tuesday morning. She thought about what kind of person learns to pull back from a reflex. What teaches a person to withdraw from their own instincts? The train moved to the tunnel, and the city outside the windows was all light and speed, and Nelly Adam thought about a German shepherd and a snapped leash and a coffee stain, and 4 sentences in an email, and she thought carefully that sometimes the things that look like accidents are just the beginning of something you don't have a name for yet. She got off at her stop. She went up the stairs into the evening. She did not think about him for the rest of the night. She thought about him for the rest of the night. And somewhere across the city, in an office that looked over Seoul like it owned a piece of its skyline, Han Si-woo was standing at the floor-to-ceiling window with his dog at his feet, and his director Kong Ji-young was asking him for the third time why Han Group was pursuing a consultation on a mid-scale residential project. And Si-woo said, without turning from the window, because the design approach is worth studying. Ji-young looked at the back of his head. She had worked for him for 4 years. She knew when he was lying. She also knew when to say nothing. She said nothing. The German shepherd, whose name, for the record, was Yo, looked up at Si-woo and then toward the door, and then back at Si-woo, and made a small sound. "Don't start," Si-woo told the dog. Yo put his head on his paws. Outside, Seoul glittered like it always did, without caring about any of them, which was the most honest thing about it. Hashtag Batch B. Monday arrived the way Mondays always did, without asking anyone if they were ready. Nelly was ready. She had decided to be ready, which was not the same thing, but she had the outfit, the notes, the research, and 3 years of ambition packed into a briefcase that she carried like it meant something because it did. Han Group Seoul office was not what she expected. She had expected the architecture to be loud, the kind of building that announces itself before you finish reading the address. Instead, it was clean and precise, like someone had thought hard about what not to add. The lobby was quiet without being cold, the materials good without being excessive, and the whole thing felt like a statement made in a low voice, which was somehow louder than shouting. She gave her name at the front desk. They were expecting her. Of course they were. She was taken to a meeting room on the 18th floor, glass walls, long table, a view of the city that she refused to be impressed by, and was immediately impressed by. A woman entered first, sharp, composed, maybe mid-30s, with the kind of energy that says she has already read every document in the room before you arrived. "Ms. Adam." The woman extended a hand. "Kong Ji-young, thank you for coming." "Thank you for the invitation," Nelly said, and she meant it professionally and nothing else. They sat. Ji-young placed a slim fold on the table and began outlining the project, a private residential development, a cluster of high-end but human-scale homes being developed on the outskirts of the city for a client who, according to Ji-young, had very specific ideas about warmth and architecture, the kind of interior language that made a building feel inhabited before anyone moved in. "Our previous consultants," Ji-young said, "approached the brief technically. The client felt the results were cold. We looked at your firm's most recent bid and found that your approach to texture and layered space was more aligned with what the client is actually looking for. And Han Group couldn't deliver that internally?" Nelly asked, professionally, genuinely. Ji-young's mouth moved with something that was almost appreciation. "We could. This is about scope and timeline. We want the best result." "Fair enough." Nelly nodded. They went through the specifics, timeline, deliverables, the division of scope, and Nelly took careful notes and asked careful questions, and was exactly the professional she had trained herself to be. He walked in 20 minutes into the meeting. Not late, not rushing, just entering the space in the way he did everything, with a particular certainty that did not need to announce itself. He took the seat at the head of the table, and Ji-young did not react, which meant this had been planned, and Nelly was going to have a conversation with herself later about why she was surprised. "Ms. Adam," he said. "Mr. Han," she said, across the table. Ji-young looked between them with an expression that was professionally neutral and personally very interested. "You two know each other?" Ji-young asked. "We've met," Nelly said. "She crashed into me," Si-woo said. Ji Young's professionally neutral expression held exactly as long as it needed to. Your dog broke its leash, Nelly said pleasantly. An accident? Siwoo said. Yes, accidents are funny things. They tend to have consequences. She smiled at him cleanly across the table and watched him look at her with those dark, unreadable eyes and decided that this was fine. This was a business meeting. She was a professional. She was going to be completely fine. She was absolutely going to struggle. The meeting lasted 1 hour. By the end of it, the terms were agreed on, the timeline set, and a follow-up meeting scheduled for 2 weeks out. Ji Young walked her to the elevator, professional and pleasant, and as Nelly stepped in, Ji Young said quietly, he doesn't usually attend these initial meetings. The doors closed before Nelly could respond. She stood in the elevator alone, looked at her reflection in the polished walls, and said out loud to nobody, this is a professional arrangement. Her reflection said nothing encouraging back. The project began. Over the next 3 weeks, Nelly and her small team from the firm worked alongside Ji Young and the Han Group's design department. And Nelly learned quickly that working with Han Group was like working with a machine that had been calibrated to excellence without being told it was impressive. Everyone was good. Everything was organized. The communication was airtight. Siwoo appeared in the spaces between the work. Not in every meeting. Not predictably. But enough. He would arrive at the site on a Thursday when he was not scheduled to be there, look at what had been done, ask a question or two, and leave. He came to one working session and sat at the far end of the table and said almost nothing, and somehow his presence reorganized the whole room's energy without him moving. He called Ji Young about things that then appeared as notes in Nelly's brief, and Nelly started to understand his fingerprints were on everything even when he was not in the room. She ran into him at the site on a Wednesday afternoon, just the two of them, Ji Young having stepped out to take a call, and Nelly was standing to show one of the residential units with her notebook, sketching the light. You sketch, he said from behind her. She turned. He was standing in the doorway, jacket off, which was somehow the most human she had seen him look. I think visually, she said. Sketching helps me see what the light is going to do before I commit to a decision. He looked at the notebook. Can I see? She held out without thinking, which was not her usual behavior with her notebooks, and he took it carefully, held it at the edges, looked at the sketch. He was quiet for a moment. You drew where the afternoon sun will fall in October, he said. I do sun studies before I choose materials. If I'm putting a warm texture on a wall, and the west light is going to hit it every evening, I need to know what color it actually becomes at 5 o'clock before I commit. He looked up from the notebook. Something had shifted in his expression, not open exactly, but engaged in a way that felt different from everything else she had seen from him. He handed the notebook back, and she took it, and his fingers did not touch hers. He had been careful. She noticed it was deliberate. She noticed because she had been paying attention, without meaning to. You do that on purpose, she said. He looked at her. What? Not touching people. You're very deliberate about it. The engagement in his expression closed, not dramatically, just quietly, like a window being pulled shut. That's an observation. I'm an observant person. Clearly. Does it bother you, she asked, that I notice? He looked at her for a moment that stretched slightly longer than was comfortable, and she held it because she had learned not to flinch from uncomfortable silences. I don't require physical contact to function, he said. Neither do most office printers, but we don't usually describe human behavior the same way we describe office equipment. Something flashed across his face, fast and real. She almost missed it. You're going to say something like that and just move on, he said. I was planning to, yes. He looked at her. She looked at him. The shell of the apartment held him in the particular quiet that spaces have before they become homes. I had an experience, he said finally, quietly, like the sudden surprise him on the way out, that made contact feel like something to manage rather than something to do by instinct. She didn't push. She didn't fill the silence with follow-up questions. She just looked at him and said, that makes sense. And for what it's worth, you still reached for my wrist when I was going to fall. He said nothing. The instinct is still there, she said simply, and looked back at her notebook. The moment passed. Ji Young came back. The work continued. But something had moved. Barely. Almost imperceptibly. Like a crack of light under a door you thought was sealed. Nelly talked to Temmie that evening sitting on her apartment floor eating ramen because she had not cooked and she was not going to apologize for it. He said something about an experience, she told Temmie. What kind of experience? He didn't say, and I didn't ask. Nelly, you're not asking is huge. You ask everyone everything. I know. You literally asked our landlord about his childhood trauma when he came to fix the pipes. He seemed like he needed to talk. My point is that you held back. That means something. It means I had professional boundaries for once. Or, Temmie said, slurping noodles, it means you actually respect him enough to let him move at his own pace. And that is very different from your usual approach. And I'm just noting it for the record. Nelly stared at her bowl. This is just a project, she said, that you are eating ramen alone on a Tuesday night thinking about. I eat ramen alone on Tuesday nights anyway. But what are you usually thinking about? Work. And tonight? She didn't answer. Yeah, Temmie said softly. That's what I thought. The twist came on a Friday. Not a small twist. Not a this is interesting twist. A twist that arrived like someone had been quietly moving pieces around a board for weeks and had finally decided to flip the whole table. Nelly was at her desk, running a material cost analysis, when her colleague and work friend Daniel, who had a particular gift of knowing things he was not supposed to know and sharing with exactly the wrong timing, appeared at her desk with a cup of tea and an expression she did not trust. So, Daniel said, whatever you're about to say, make it quick. I'm calculating. The client for the Han Group residential project. She looked up. His name is Han J1, Daniel said. She stared. Han, as in Siwoo's father. As in the project we have been killing ourselves over for 3 weeks, is the Han family's private residential development. Like, for them, for their family to live in. Nelly put down her pen. Why? She said, slowly. Would Siwoo hire an outside consultant for his own family's home? That, Daniel said, pointing at her, is the right question. She sat with that for approximately 45 seconds. Then she picked up her phone and sent Ji Young a message asking for the full client brief from the original project document. The one she had been given at the first meeting had a client summary, not a name. Ji Young replied in 7 minutes. The client has requested privacy. The brief is comprehensive. Not a denial. Not a yes. A redirect. Nelly stared at the message. She thought about Siwoo standing to shell a residential unit at a project that was for his father's house, watching her sketch where the afternoon light would fall in October. She thought about Han Group bidding for her firm's small contract, which had brought her documents with her name to his desk, which had brought them to a coffee shop collision that she was now reconsidering as possibly not a collision at all, because she was the one who ran, and he was the one who was already there. Wait. She pulled up the bid document. Her firm had submitted their bid digitally, registered through a public tender portal. The Han Group bid had been submitted the same day as hers. She had not thought about that timing before, because why would she? It was a common tender process. But she thought about what he had said. My company was the other bidder, said casually, said as a disclosure. If you are bidding against a company, you know who else is in the process. You have access to the submission list, which means he knew her company's name before the coffee shop, which means when Yo came barreling around that corner on Tuesday morning, she put both hands flat on her desk. Daniel, she said. Yes. How did the leash break? Daniel blinked. What leash? High-quality dog leash. German shepherd. The kind of man who has 2 bodyguards and a company worth more money than I will see in my life. He clips his own dog's leash before a morning walk. Daniel stared at her. Are you saying? I'm saying, she said carefully, that I need more information before I say anything. She was calm. She was professional. She was processing this the way she processed everything, methodically, gathering data, constructing a picture. And the picture that was forming was one where Han Siwoo, a man who controlled variables, had arranged a collision. Her phone rang. She looked at the screen. It was Siwoo. Of course it was. She picked up. Ms. Adam. His voice on the phone was exactly what she expected. Controlled, low, direct. Mr. Han, she said, I'd like to discuss the project progress. Are you free this evening? Define this evening. Dinner. 7. I'll send the address. She looked at Daniel. Daniel was mouthing something that looked like, go. 7 is fine, she said. He ended the call without another word. She looked at her phone. He's very efficient on the phone, Daniel offered, disturbingly so. The restaurant was small and quiet, the kind of place that existed to allow people to have conversations without being watched, and Nelly arrived exactly at 7 because she refused to be late and refused to arrive early on principle. Siwoo was already there, 1 bodyguard positioned near the entrance, 1 table, 2 chairs. No Yo. Thankfully, she sat down. He looked at her. She looked at him. Is Yo's leash still broken? She asked. Something moved behind his eyes. It was replaced. And the original one Was it actually broken, or was it helped along? The silence that followed was exactly 2 seconds too long. She felt it land in her chest like a stone in water. "You arranged it," she said. Not loudly, not dramatically, just clearly. The way she said things when she knew she was right and didn't need performance to confirm it. Siwoo looked at her across the table. His expression was the most honest she had ever seen it. Still controlled. But something in the tightness had shifted, the way a held breath shifts. "I wanted to see your work," he said. "The bid documents gave me your firm's portfolio. I needed to assess whether the approach could translate to what the project actually required. And you decided a staged dog chase was your best assessment method. I didn't predict the dog chasing you down the street, but you knew I would be there. I knew your office location. I knew your morning routine from your company's public social media. You post your iced coffee every Tuesday." She stared at him. "I know how that sounds," he said. "How does it sound?" she asked, genuinely curious what version of this he was going to offer her. "Calculated." "Calculated," she repeated. "That's the word you chose. It is what it was." It was also, depending on the angle you look at it from, a man researching a woman's morning routine, so he could be in her path. She looked at him steadily. "That is the kind of thing that has different names." "I know," he said, "and I'm not going to tell you it was a mistake in method, but the project is real. The consultation is legitimate. Ji Young did not know the full context, and the decision I made to bring your firm was entirely based on the quality of your work. After you staged a meeting with me to assess whether I was worth working with." "Yes." She sat back. She was not angry in a way that felt like fire. She was angry in a way that felt like cold water, clear and precise. She had earned that contract. She had won that bid. She had walked into Han Group on her own merit, and she had been good in every room she had entered. That was real, but the premise of how she got there had been constructed by him. "My work is good," she said. "I know. I don't need someone to build a path for me. I didn't build a path. I looked for confirmation of what the document suggested. You confirmed it. By crashing into you. By recovering from it in 4 minutes and still getting to your presentation on time and winning the contract." He paused. "I found out the result of the tender before I sent the email." She looked at him. "I already knew you won," he said. "The email wasn't conditional on the result. It was sent because the result confirmed what I had assessed." She was quiet for a long moment. The waiter appeared, and they ordered, and the waiter disappeared, and the restaurant hummed gently around them with the sound of other people's conversations. "Why didn't you just approach the firm professionally?" she asked. "Send an email, request a portfolio review." He was quiet for a moment. "Genuinely, this time, not strategically. Because I needed to see how someone moved in the world before I invited them into something personal. This project. My father's home." She looked at him. "He's unwell," Siwoo said, each word placed down carefully, like something fragile. "He has been asking to return to a home that feels like it was built for people and not for display. He grew up with very little and built everything from the ground, and somewhere in the building of it the spaces around him stopped feeling like his." He looked at the table for a moment. "I have spent 3 years reading design briefs and meeting consultants and watching presentations. Every single one of them saw the budget and designed for budget. Nobody designed for the person." Nelly was very still. "Your bid document for that residential contract," Siwoo continued, "had a line in the brief summary that said, 'A home should know who lives in it.' And then you backed it with a material and light study that was not about trend or spectacle. It was about how a person feels standing in their own kitchen at 6 in the morning." He looked up at her. That was not something I expected to find in a public tender document. She thought about the notebook she carried everywhere. She thought about the sun studies. She thought about a line she had written at 22 years old in her planning book about building spaces that remembered people. "Your father," she said quietly. "What does he love?" Siwoo looked at her across the table, and something in his face did something she had not seen it do before. Not quite open, but the door was no longer fully closed. "He loves cooking," Siwoo said. "He wakes up before everyone and makes juk and drinks his tea standing up because he says sitting makes him feel like a guest in his own morning. He loves the sound of rain. He has a chair that everyone in the family has told him to throw away for 15 years, and he has not thrown it away." "What color is the chair?" Siwoo blinked. "Green. Dark green." "That chair goes in the design," she said simply. "Whatever the room is, the chair exists in it, and everything else grows around it." He looked at her for a long time. "I need you to understand," she said, "that I am still processing the fact that your dog's leash situation was not entirely accidental. I haven't decided how I feel about that yet. That's fair. And I need you to understand that I don't work for people. I work with people. If this project continues, I need access to your father. Conversation, not just brief documents. I need to understand a person before I can build the space. Agreed. And I need you to stop staging things. If you want to know something about me or my work, ask. He looked at her. Something in his chest moved. She could almost see it. Ask, she repeated. All right, he said. She picked up her glass. Now, tell me about the rest of the project. The real brief, not the one Ji-young gave me. And he did. They were in that restaurant for 2.5 hours. And at some point the food came, and at some point they were no longer talking about the project. And at some point she was laughing at something he said, a dry, understated observation about an architect he had worked with who had designed a house with no storage because he felt storage was emotionally avoidant. And she laughed so hard she had to put down her glass. And Si-woo was watching her laugh with an expression that he was not, managing carefully enough. She caught it. He looked away. She did not point it out. That was progress. Before we get to the end of this story, and it is going to give you everything you came for, I need you to do something for me. If you're not subscribed to Stories with Soul yet, do it right now. Right now. Because this kind of story doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from a team that sits down and pours everything into every word. And we need you on the team. Subscribe and hit that notification bell, because we are not slowing down. There was a night, 3 weeks later, when the project had moved into its second phase, and the design was beginning to take shape in material samples and light plans and a mood board that Nelly had built with the green chair at the center of everything. Si-woo came to her office. Nahan Group. Her office. Her firm's modest but well-organized office space in a building that did not have a skyline view but had very good afternoon light, which she had chosen intentionally. Her colleague Daniel saw him walk in and sent Nelly a message from across the room that just said 3 exclamation points. Si-woo sat across from her desk. He had something in his hand, a small photograph, and he placed it on the desk in front of her. It was a man, older, maybe late 60s, standing in a kitchen, laughing. The kitchen was small and a little crowded, and he was clearly mid-conversation with someone off camera. And the laugh was real, not the performed kind. His eyes were closed with it. My father, Si-woo said. Nelly looked at the photograph for a long moment. He laughs with his whole face. He does. What was he saying when this was taken? He was telling my mother about a fish he had caught 30 years ago, and the size grew by about a meter every year he told the story. She looked up. Si-woo was looking at the photograph too, and his face was doing the thing it did when he wasn't managing it, which was becoming quietly human. He's going to love the kitchen, she said. I know. He looked up. He's asking to meet you. She blinked. Your father? He saw a photo of the mood board. He asked who made it. I told him. He said he wants to meet the person who put his chair in the middle. Something warm pressed against the inside of her chest. When? She asked. This weekend, if you're free. She looked at him across her desk. You know, this is a lot of access you're giving me. I'm aware. To your family. Yes. For someone who doesn't typically let people close, she said carefully, you are moving quite quickly. He looked at her steadily. I know what I'm doing. Do you? No, he said. And it was the most honest thing she had heard him say, and it landed somewhere she did not have a professional category for. She held his gaze for a beat too long. Saturday, she said. Saturday, he agreed. She met Han Jae-won on a cool Saturday morning at a temporary residence in a quieter part of the city, a warm, a little chaotic space full of books and the smell of cooking, and an old green chair that lived in the corner of the sitting room like it owned the place. The older man opened the door himself, before anyone could stop him, and looked at Nelly with the kind of eyes that had lived a lot and were not done living yet. You're the one who put my chair in the design, he said. I am, she said. He looked at her for a moment, then said something to Si-woo in rapid Korean, and Si-woo's jaw did something that was almost a smile. He says you have a good face, Si-woo told her. Please tell him. He also has a very good face, she said. The older man laughed before Si-woo translated it, which meant his Korean was not the only language he understood in that moment. And Nelly liked him immediately, completely, and without condition. They sat in the kitchen. The older man made tea, which he insisted on doing himself, and they talked for 2 hours. She asked him about the things he would told her, about mornings and cooking and the sound of rain, and he gave her details she could build with, textures and rhythms and a memory of the first house he had ever owned and what the light to the window looked like at 7 in the morning in autumn. Si-woo sat at the corner of the table the whole time, mostly quiet, watching his father talk to her. She caught him watching. She did not point it out. After the older man went to rest, Siwoo walked her out. He hasn't talked that much to someone new in a long time, Siwoo said. He was just waiting for someone to ask the right questions, she said. People usually know what they love. They just need someone to be interested in it. He was looking at her the way she was learning to recognize, the look that was not managed. Nelly, he said, her name, without Ms. in front of it for the first time. She stopped walking. I want to be clear about something, he said. Okay, what I'm doing, this project, seeing you in this context repeatedly, it is not purely professional. She looked at him. Her heartbeat did something it did not have permission to do. I know, she said, and that's acceptable to you? I haven't decided, she said honestly, because you still stage the dog chase, and I still have a professional project to complete. And you are still someone who holds people at a very specific distance, and I am someone who asks landlords about their childhood, and I don't know what that collision looks like long-term. Accurate summary of the variables, he said. Stop describing us like we're a project scope. I'm still learning how to talk about this. She looked at him for a long time, at the face that was almost never fully open, at the man who had researched her morning routine, and then stood in the shell of his father's future home, listening to her explain son's studies like it mattered. Tell me something true, she said. Not about the project. Not about strategy. Something real. He was quiet for a moment. When you walked out of the coffee shop that first morning, he said, after you told me I would have lost a bit anyway. A small pause. I stayed in the shop for 12 minutes before I remembered why I had gone in. She looked at him. That has not happened to me before, he said. She exhaled slowly. Siwoo. Yes, I'm going to finish this project, she said. And I'm going to do it the way I do everything, completely and without compromise. And whatever is happening between us is going to have to exist alongside that without consuming it. Can you do that? He looked at her. I've been doing that for 8 weeks. So have I, she said quietly. And I'm tired. Something in his expression broke open, just slightly, like the first honest light through a curtain that's been held shut for too long. And he said nothing, but he took one step closer. Close enough that the distance between them was no longer a professional one. He did not touch her, but he looked at her the way you look at something you have decided to stop being careful about. I know a place, he said, that has good tea and terrible lighting, and nobody knows I go there. She looked at him. Are you asking me somewhere? I'm describing a location. That is somehow the most romantic thing I have ever heard, and also the most evasive. Come anyway, he said. She looked at him for one more moment. Then she said, let me get my jacket. And that was how it started, not with a declaration, not with a grand gesture, not with a man who had everything reaching down to a woman with nothing. With two people, both of them in possession of their own lives and their own ambitions and their own complicated things, deciding carefully to begin. The design was completed 14 weeks later. Nelly stood in Han Jae-won's kitchen on the morning before the family moved in a space where every material had been chosen for how it would feel at 6 in the morning, where the light came through a window at an angle she had calculated in October, where a dark green chair sat in the corner of the sitting room like it had always been there and always would be. Siwoo stood beside her. He's going to stand at that window every morning, she said. I know. You're going to have to act surprised when he tells you it's perfect. I'll manage. She looked at him sideways. He was looking at the room, and she realized, standing there in the space she had built for someone else's father, that she had been building things all her life to prove she could. And this was the first time the thing she built had felt like proof of something else entirely. Proof that she could see people, really see them, and that was not a small thing. It was the most important thing she did. Siwoo's hand brushed hers. Not accidental. Not managed. Just a small, deliberate, quiet thing. She looked down at their hands. He did not pull back. She looked up at him. Progress, she said softly. His mouth curved. Properly this time. A real smile. The kind that changed his whole face into something she was not prepared for, warm and a little disarmed and entirely human. Progress, he agreed. The German shepherd was somewhere outside, with a new leash, definitely not broken, and somewhere in the city Temmie was probably calling, and Daniel was probably sending 3 exclamation points, and Ji-young was probably already preparing the paperwork for the next project, and none of that mattered right now. What mattered was this, a space that knew who it was for. 2 people learning the same thing about each other. And the particular courage it takes to let someone close enough to see you, really see you, and deciding that the risk of that is worth more than the safety of distance. That is the lesson, if you want one. Not the grand romance lesson. Not the rich man, ambitious woman lesson. Just this. The people who have learned to hold themselves at arm's length from the world have usually been taught that contact comes with cost. What changes them is not someone who forces their way through the wall. It is someone who stands at the door and makes the inside feel worth returning to. Nelly did not fix Siwoo. She did not try to. She was too busy building things and drinking iced coffee and telling dogs to go to therapy. But she made the inside feel worth returning to. And he, in his own way, built her a stage and then got out of the way and watched her own it. Not because she needed him to, because that is what it looks like when someone actually sees you. Now, if you made it to the end of this story and your heart is full and your spirit is warm and you're thinking about someone who makes the inside feel worth returning to, then you are exactly who this channel was made for. Subscribe to Stories with Soul right now if you haven't already, and share this with somebody who needs to hear a story this good today. We will be back with another one, and it is going to hit just as hard. Stay with us.
Hi, my beautiful audience. I'm grateful for you watching our videos. Thank you to my subscribers. I really hope you enjoyed this beautiful story. Kindly share to your friends, your family who needs this message, and also tell me what we could have done differently. Bye.